Well, James Gunn has been back at it again. He's on Threads, he's answering questions, he's answering fan queries, and it turns out we now know that Xolo Mariduena is gonna be back in the DCU. And this isn't necessarily news because James Gunn has mentioned several times in the past, including when he went to see Blue Beetle in theaters. He posted on Threads with a picture with his co-CEO of the DC Studios, Peter Safran, that hey, like so excited to see this character, and I'm glad to have him playing the role in the new DCU. So we've known for some time, although like people still speculated maybe that he was saying that just because he was trying to promote Blue Beetle, which I don't know how much that helped because Blue Beetle has not made a ton of money at the box office. But we now know, according to James Gunn, that Blue Beetle is going to be one of the characters that's going to continue to be played by the actor that played it in the previous DCEU continuity. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the new continuity and the old continuity are the same. It just means that they're borrowing and keeping some of the elements and that they might dispense with a few of the others. So, John, I just wanted to ask you, like, A, what is your reaction to that? Like, and then B, how do you think this plays out? Because obviously we have this first Blue Beetle movie that establishes Xolo in the role. We of course have the family. We have his love interest. Like I love George Lopez in the movie. He was fantastic,
Oh,
and the
yeah.
whole movie was a nice little adventure, kind of a good by the numbers origin story. But now that we are kind of moving forward, do you think that movie will be part of that continuity? Yeah, like just give me your reaction and like where do we go from here?
I think I think it's a very interesting way of doing it. I think when it comes to Blue Beetle, it's like it's up in the air with whether what Mariduena is going to be doing, whether it's like a sequel or a reboot or a requel or whatever. So I think in terms of my headcanon, that is, they're kind of gonna do what I imagine they kind of did with Logan way back when, where in that movie they mentioned the Statue of Liberty, like in the first X-Men movie. And so I feel like the events of the movie that just came out will maybe be in the DCU, just not exactly. Like those events will be there, but we're going to get a whole new, it's going to be rebooted, it's going to be totally new, and I think that that's probably the best course of action. Just kind of cut the head off the hydra sort of thing and just let it let it kind of die with the DCU. I know that sounds very harsh. I don't mean it to sound very harsh, but it's just like you got to go fresh and new. Everything has to be fresh and new. So, but if you're keeping the actor, I think the reboot would definitely be the best course of action with maybe hints of what it was before. I think introducing Ted Cord would definitely help that, like get go in that new direction with the older Blue Beetle. So I think I think that's I think just having him and possibly co-stars would definitely be a really good course of action because he was so good in that movie. He was easily the best part of that movie. He had that movie on his shoulders and he did such a good job. So having that reassurance that he is coming back was definitely great. And I'm intrigued with how the DCU will handle him and how James Gunn what plans James Gunn has for Sherlock Mariduena.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun to see where the character goes. Like honestly, the biggest thing for me watching that movie was they got the casting right. Like they not just the lead, but like also a lot of the supporting roles. So I'd love to see that version of Blue Beetle return. And while I'm not necessarily looking forward to them kind of changing it up so much so that because like visually make it different because we've like I think you touched upon like Daredevil with Marvel. They're calling the new series Daredevil Born Again, but they've also kind of given him a new suit which is a little more comic accurate, but it's much more colorful. And I think a lot of the people like because what had happened is like especially with something like a Daredevil that ran for so many years,
Yeah.
people like the version of that character. They like everything to do with that character's look, the feel, how the talks, moves, and all acts and all that. It's and so when you change it up and you're kind of saying, well, it's sort of the similar, but it's not exactly that, and we're only going to use what we want and then dispense with the rest. It sort of opens you up to scrutiny and then also criticism from people saying, well, why don't you just go with something completely different? Like it's almost as if like, when Zack Snyder brought in Batman into the DCU and Batman v Superman, he went with a completely new actor and Ben Affleck, completely new take on the character. This is an older Batman who is really like much darker and kind of going in this, you know, basically he was killing people. Like, Batman doesn't, it's against his code to kill people, but this Batman was so far gone, kind of like the Frank Miller version of Batman.
Yeah.
Um, Instead of bringing back Christian Bale or somebody like Christian Bale and saying, "Oh, like, this is sort of that Batman that Christopher Nolan did, but not exactly." Like we're maybe okay, so he does drive the Tumbler, but he has a different suit. Like like he didn't do that. Like they went in a
Yeah.
completely different direction. So or even like with Matt Reeves, like different costume, different like symbol, different car, different everything, different Gotham, like so all of that. So I think you always kind of leave room for confusion and room for interpretation. And James Gunn, in his quote, I think one of his threads, he said like, "Oh yes, some actors will be playing characters they've played in other stories, and some plot points might be consistent with plot points from the dozens of films, shows, and animated." Projects, and the animated part particularly intrigues me, that have come from DC in the past, but nothing is canon until CC, which refers to Creature Commandos, and Legacy, referring to Superman Legacy. So I do wonder though, what he means by that, because a lot of times, like these statements that he's making, it's sort of you leave room for interpretation, as I just said. Like you're leaving fans with an answer, but not an answer that necessarily, you know, quells all future questions, let's say. Because the way he worded his statement, you wonder when he says consistent with older previous stories, does that mean that if we get Blue Beetle in this new universe and he gets another Blue Beetle movie, and like and the spoiler alert, that they had a post credit scene in the previous Blue Beetle movie where Ted Kord is like apparently alive at the end of the film. It's kind of hard to tell who voices the character. People have theories. I'm sure like there's if you go to IMDb you'll find out. But uh, they've already sort of established that Ted Kord in that Blue Beetle movie is not exactly dead. But at the same time, like if you now get a second Blue Beetle movie in the DCU, but it's the first Blue Beetle outing in the DCU, do they only, like you said, loosely reference the events from the first movie, like they did in that X-Men, sorry, in Logan, or do they say that previous movie is not canon at all, and this is like the first outing, and it just happens to be that this version of Blue Beetle went through a similar journey off screen, and so it's almost like the fans are left to do like a head canon thing and say, oh yeah, so technically that previous movie is maybe the best representation of what this Blue Beetle's past is, but
Right.
not really. So that when they do put out like a box set of the DCU Chapter One Gods and Monsters, it's not going to include the first Blue Beetle movie. But if you happen to own the first Blue Beetle movie, some people might say watch that before you watch the second one, which
Yeah.
is the first Blue Beetle movie in the DCU. It's so like it kind of
Very
creates
confusing.
this
Yeah.
weird situation, which I do get worried about. But yeah, I guess we'll see. Let us know, guys, in the comments below what you think about the future of Blue Beetle. Of course, I think it's a big positive that Xolo Mariduena is back in the role. He's going to continue
Definitely.
to reprise his role as Blue Beetle, and we may get more of the actors from this movie, like George Lopez, Bruno Marquezine, and who knows who's going to play Ted Kord. We don't know, but maybe that will be another fantastic casting. James Gunn is good at
Fingers
those.
crossed for Jason Sudeikis. That's definitely
That would be,
he was teased a lot, and I'm like, ooh, that would be
yeah.
perfect.
I remember that would be awesome. I think that would be perfect casting, absolutely. So yeah, guys, let us know in the comments below what you think about Blue Beetle coming back in the DCU, a possible sequel. Will he show up in other movies and shows before he shows up in his own movie or show? Let us know in the comments, and of course, like and subscribe for more content like this. We keep bringing new DC news and updates to you every day here on Also Curious, and so much more. So we'll talk to you next time.